Hey everyone, welcome back to Self-Serving Skillet. In weeks past, we made a salsa, we made a guacamole, we made a queso, and you might be asking yourself, what else can he dip tortilla chips in? Well, not an onion. We're gonna make a beautiful refried beans, and here's how we're gonna do it. We are gonna start with an onion, however, and I want about a half to quarter-inch dice on this, depending on how chunky you want this to be. I tend not to get super particular about it because I want this to cook down until it's sweet, and that means it's gonna be very pliable, very soft. And then what's onion's best friend? But garlic, and I'm gonna use a whole lot of it. I like about 5 cloves in this much refried beans. This many refried beans, I'm turning it into one thing. So I think it's not plural anymore, but we still say refried beans. It's not one refried bean. But refried beans is the dish. Let me know if you know how I'm supposed to say that. But however you want to tell people how to get flavor into their beans, the next thing I'm gonna do is pick my pepper profile. And I have here a Serrano pepper. It's about a medium heat. This is sort of the upper limit of what I usually like, how spicy I like my entire dish to be. And then I want some base to it. This Ancho pepper, which is a dried poblano, isn't really that spicy. It has a lot more flavor to it, a lot more nuance to it. So I'm gonna do both. I'm gonna go for something that is spicy and something that is flavorful. You could very easily do not a dried chili, do a whole poblano or a whole Anaheim or something like that that has a lot of flavor but not a lot of heat, and you're gonna get the best of both worlds. I'm gonna dice these up pretty small. They're not really going to soften up as much as the onions, although they are gonna get pretty soft. And I might want to soak this poblano chili in some hot water until it loosens up a little bit. And my flavor profile for this, my spices that I'm using are going to be whole cumin seeds. You can use ground cumin if you want, and smoked paprika. You can really do anything else that's savory. You can do garlic powder, onion powder, chili powder, adobo seasoning, mustard powder, black pepper, chipotle powder, white peppercorns, granulated onion, red pepper. Allspice might get a little weird, but you could even make that work with the right flavor profile. This is just what I'm using. And fans of the show will let you know what I think about hard and fast recipes. There is no spoon. Let me know down below if you get that. When it comes to cumin seed, there's really like 3 ways to do it. 1, you could toast it, then grind it. 2, you could just grind it and put it in your dish. 3, there's a method called blooming, and that involves putting the whole seed into hot oil. That's what I'm gonna do here. And my last bit of mise en place is a can of pinto beans. You can definitely make these if you want to, and you might be asking me, Curtis, why don't you just get a can of refried beans if you're gonna open a can of beans to make refried beans with? Well, I want them to be a specific flavor profile, and I don't have some time right now to make some beans. These are about 3 times more expensive in the canned variety to a similar dried bean. We're talking about the end product here, but what does it cost me to be able to make $1.50 and buy these? Could that possibly be worth my time? Yeah, maybe. The best use of your time is to make a whole bunch of these and can them yourself, and then you have just beans for days ready to go. Personally, when I make a pot of beans, I tend to freeze a couple mason jars, and that way I don't have to go through the canning process. But I'm gonna take this can of beans and put it inside this sieve in this liquid measuring cup so that I can catch all of the bean water. And that is called aquafaba, which translates to bean water. And bean water is such a wonderful ingredient. You can whip it into sort of a savory meringue. You can use the bean water, which I think is kind of the best part. It really has a lot of flavor and helps the texture a lot, but we're gonna use the bean water today to add hydration to this and get our refried beans to exactly the consistency that we want. So the first thing I'm gonna do when I get my pan on this heat is put about a 1/4 cup of this tallow into the pan and let it melt down. Now that might seem like a lot, but that's only 4 tablespoons, which also might seem like a lot. But this is what's gonna make it so creamy. And also, a lot of things are going to need to fry in that tallow one after the other. So as soon as we smash those beans down, you're gonna notice that it's almost gone. A couple years ago, actually right before I did that expired milk video, I made refried beans on the show before, and I recently watched it and figured out that I could probably do a little better job. I've learned some things since then. So that one's coming off of the channel, and it's probably gonna live on Patreon as just like some extra content, what the show used to be for those of you that would like to support the show. And if you're a fan of the show, this show is largely brought to you by the incredible generosity of my Patreon supporters. A couple months ago, we made this beef tallow. This is lard, but coming from a cow. And then last month, we made these chips that I'm gonna try all of these different dips and sauces that I'm making. So link is in the description to both of these things. And if you want to support the show for as little as $1 a month, you get all of this new content ad-free, so you'll never have to watch an ad like this. Once that tallow is melted down, I'm gonna get all those onions in the pan. And once every maybe 30, 45 seconds, I'm just gonna stir everything around until it gets nice and starts to caramelize, starts to get a little sweet. I still want it to be a little savory, but once it starts to turn color, once it starts to smell very fragrant, I'm gonna go in with my garlic and Serrano chilies and wait until those get fragrant. And the next step is gonna add a little bit of water. It's gonna stop some of our cooking process for a little bit of time. So while I still have that oil nice and hot, I'm gonna bloom my cumin seeds. Now blooming is just frying the spices in oil, and it does a little bit of something different to them than toasting or using them just raw and ground up. And after that gets, you guessed it, fragrant, you're gonna go in with your ancho peppers. I'm gonna dump this extra water that I have from the ancho peppers into my bean water so that it doesn't splatter all over the place. I want as little water as I can, so I'm just gonna get in, that's just fine. And I'm gonna put those anchos right in there, make sure that everything is pretty well incorporated before I add my beans. And these beans are going to get refried. And we're not really refrying the beans, we're just frying the beans once because they were already boiled and infused with water, rehydrated, I guess. They're rehydrated, refried, rehydrated and fried once. And you can mash those up with the back of a spatula if you want. You could even put them in the blender beforehand. That way you can't really control your moisture as much. You can do it. I'd rather not clean a blender though. But I'm gonna use a potato masher and I'm gonna mash these up, and you'll see as soon as they're all mashed up, you're gonna end up with a little bean fond on the bottom of the pan. Don't worry, if you keep scraping, that'll eventually release and come up, become part of your refried beans. Then we go in with our water, with our mix now of bean water and ancho water. And we're gonna make this into something that looks like what we wanna eat. We're just playing with hydration levels here. And once that's set, once you kind of have it where you want it to go, I'm gonna go in with a little smoked paprika, and then I'm gonna wait until the very end to taste and salt, because these beans had some salt in them in the can. Last but not least, I'm gonna garnish with a little cheese and green onion, and it is ready to eat. Just the right consistency, just the right size of dice. We have sort of a basey pepper flavor from that ancho, which is lovely. A little bit of smokiness from that, and the smoked paprika. The Serrano really just pops up and says, ah, and then it goes away. Really, really well balanced refried beans. And if you want to make these, my chips are on Patreon, my tallow is on Patreon. Both of those are in the link in the description below. But if you are into more sauces and dips this entire month, I'm slowly building a plate of nachos. So, pico de gallo, guacamole. I'll see you next week. Get in the kitchen and make yourself something amazing.